Well, good morning, ladies. How are you?
We're great. How are you?
Good, good. I'll take a second just to introduce myself in the podcast, and then, of course, you. I'm so glad you two are with me. I am Melissa McLeod, and I'm here at the Wool and the Floss, and along with my good buddy in St. Louis, Megan Holmes at the Needlepoint Clubhouse. We get together every other week and do this thing we call the Pointing It Out podcast and bring fabulous designers and business people and industry people together, teachers, whatever's of interest to the stitchers of the world, so to speak. So we are so glad to have you here. Today we have with us Rebecca Fletcher. And why don't you wave, Rebecca, because I'm never sure how it records. I think you're on the bottom. And Elizabeth Malakoff, and they are the sisters that bring us WIPStitch Needlepoint. Is that the
Needleworks?
Needleworks. All of a sudden I'm like, I think I got that wrong. Well, good morning. It's always kind of fun to have double people here, and it's always a little tricky, but since you guys are sisters, I think you either will talk over each other constantly or not at all because you know each other so well. So give me some background on you, where you are, where you grew up, start where you want to start.
We're in Dallas, Texas, and we were born and raised here, and Elizabeth and I are about 17 months apart in age. I'll let you, me. Me.
I'm the younger sister too, so I get that.
So we were just a year apart in school, and we grew up here and went to college at the University of Texas together, and ended up kind of being on separate coasts after that. I was in New York and Elizabeth was in LA, but managed to migrate back to Texas, where we live with our houses backing up to each other.
Yeah, it's so cute. I can stand it.
We have 5 children between us, 4 girls and 1 boy. So my son has 4 sisters.
He's the prince.
He's the prince. And they're all graduate. Well, Elizabeth still got 1 in college.
Only 1 left on the payroll. That's why.
1 left on the payroll.
I have 1 left on the payroll too. So
I just got also you forgot to mention that we had is my video? Yeah, it's working. Oh, I'm muted.
No, you're not. You're good. We hear you. Oh, now you're muted.
Now you're muted.
Sorry. Ever since I left my full-time job in January, and when I left that, I was like, I'm never getting on Zoom again. So,
well, thank you for getting
rusty. We also had a double wedding.
Yeah.
And we are having our 30th wedding anniversary on June 6th. So big milestones there.
Well, I can't decide if your parents were really happy because that maybe had some economies of scale, or they were completely overwhelmed.
My dad said at the rehearsal dinner, he kind of joked that if my mom could have figured out a way to have 2 dresses that night, which now like people do that, but otherwise, he said he didn't really notice any savings going on. Other than he didn't have to buy her, he only bought her 1 dress.
Well, and 1 trip to the hair salon and one nail appointment.
1 makeup guy.
I don't think that's adding up to a whole lot, though. I understand.
No.
But how fun is that? And so was that in Dallas, I presume, too?
That was in Dallas in 1992. And so
everything's bigger in Dallas, or in Texas.
Everything's bigger in Dallas and in Texas. We like big hair. We like big houses. Yes.
I think it's interesting though, that we wound up in business together because if anything, that experience, so we had about a year-long engagement, obviously kind of planning and getting that organized. And Rebecca and I have a lot in common, but we're also really different. And so I think like planning that wedding was sort of a, foreshadowing to how well we work together, because we both have really good our strengths and weaknesses. And everybody's like, oh, was that just crazy planning that wedding because it must have taken forever?
Really,
no, we wanted the same things, and the things that we wanted different, we were okay with each other. Like she wanted to walk down the aisle first, I wanted to walk down the aisle last. Like it literally just worked very seamless. So in some ways, I kind of look back at that planning of that wedding together is sort of a foreshadowing of working well together on other projects down the road.
Well, it sounds like you must have complementary skill sets.
I think so.
Yeah, that's really great. That's really great. So that said, I know you went to school together, or not together because you're a year apart, but went to the same university. Did you have different educational majors?
Yes. I mean, Elizabeth is truly, we have a long line of artists in our family. My grandmother was a floral designer. Our mother was an interior designer, and Elizabeth is a graphic designer. They have that visionary thing in their head where they can see an empty piece of paper, walk into an empty room and envision it. I don't have that. I'm not good at that. I can barely write my name. But I don't have bad taste. If somebody puts an ugly chair and a nice chair in front of me, I tend to pick the nice chair, but I don't have that ability to create and to envision something. And so she definitely went down that path at college, because you were in the College of Fine Arts at UT, right?
Yeah, I was a studio art major. Back then there really wasn't at Texas any type of communications. I was always interested in graphic design. When I was in 7th grade, my math teacher had us draw these tessellations like MC Escher used to create. And I remember she used to always pass out these Andes chocolate mints when you did something right in math. And she gave me like 3 mints and she said, "You're going to be a graphic designer one day." And because I just spent days and days making these tessellations. And that was always sort of in my head, like, what is that? I'm interested in that. And then the company my dad worked for used a local ad agency here called the Richards Group, and to do all their like annual reports and graphics. And I was always so fascinated by their work. And they had a kind of a little studio within a studio at their company. So there was just always this interest in it. And when I went to Texas, I kind of wanted to do that. They didn't really have classes in that. And I mean, the Apple computer was literally that little tiny, like the first generation. So I just took studio art classes and learned about color theory and drawing. And eventually some classes started to pop in on typography and early design. And that's kind of where I took off. And when I graduated from Texas, I really wanted to pursue that. And I wound up going out to LA, to Pasadena, to a college called Art Center College of Design, which is probably one of the most wonderful design schools in our country, from everything from auto. I'm sure everybody up there in Michigan knows about it because it's the #1 car design school in the country. And if you want to be a car designer, you go to Art Center. And
I would hear you go to CCS, which is in our backyard, but
right. Oh, for sure. Yes,
idea, right?
But Art Center, I majored in graphic and packaging design there and got another degree, and then kind of took off from there.
Wow, how fun is that?
And I ended up going to law school and I was a law, and then moved to New York and was practicing law, and then quickly realized I needed a new career because the hours were so horrific. So I actually went into nonprofit work, raising money, which is kind of a sales job. So I've had a long career in that before this got all started.
And so then did you all kind of sit back a little bit and just raise your kids and enjoy life, or have you always worked? Well, you said you just retired, Rebecca.
Well,
Elizabeth, sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I've always worked in a sense that, Michael was in law school out in California. And once we finished up out there, we moved back to Texas in the early 90s. And I worked for a design firm here for 4 or 5 years. Once I had my kids pretty close together. So my first 2 at least. And when they were real little, the nice thing about having that degree and those skill sets is you can kind of freelance from anywhere. So I started a freelance business really early in my life, in my early 20s. And I've always done freelance. Like even when I worked places, it's just so that I could have creative outlet outside of whatever brand I was working for. And I did that for a really long time. And I'd started a little card design business that I loved kind of before there were such things as tiny prints and some of that stuff. And then I wound up once my kids were kind of older and in high school, I really missed being in an office environment and the interaction. And so I went to work for an organization here in Dallas called YPO and their marketing team. And then after that, I went and worked for this private school that I went to and that my kids all went to called Hockaday. And I recently left there, and what led to sort of the needlepoint thing is my kids were now all getting out of college, and I was like, I kind of just want to do something for me, and really needed a change of environment, a change of better schedule, and be able to make my own hours. So that's sort of where we started to head into WIPStitch.
I'm jumping all around because that's what I do. Was the birth of WIPStitch more one of your ideas than the other?
It actually was a friend of ours. It was during COVID, and we had a small group of 4 or 5 friends who were all stitchers, and we get on a Zoom call together. We called it our Stitch, Bitch, and Bravo because we all love the Bravo Housewives stores. And so we'd get on Zoom, and we were all stitching our projects, and we were talking about the, different shows, or just, gossiping or bitching about life, bitching about COVID. And then there was someone we were all following on Instagram that had this really beautiful garland of all of these ornaments that she had made over the last 10 years. Her name is Allie Egan. She's here in Dallas. She's got her Instagram is Francophile Dallas, and a lot of people follow her. And we were starting to talk about wanting to make some of those ornaments, but her husband, Allie Egan's husband, is from New Orleans. She had a lot of New Orleans themes that she bought from Needle Arts in New Orleans. And we were like, well, we need our Texas theme ornaments. We need, a Whataburger. We need, things from that. And finally, one of our friends, Caroline, said, well, Elizabeth should design them, and Rebecca, you should run the company. And so it really kind of came from that.
My gosh, that's so funny. That's really great.
Yeah. So like our early stuff really was some of our more like Texas ornaments that are kind of what we call Texas icons, things that anybody here knows. And it was really out of just, one, I was really interested in, I love stitching, but I was really interested in learning how to paint canvases and design canvases. I've always designed belts for friends when their kids graduate, life belts and things. I've done that quite a bit. And I just was like, why am I not doing this? Like, I totally know how to work a computer, and, anyway, that's sort of where it started. And then, once we kind of did the Texas icons and decided to really make it a company and all that, then we really started to brainstorm about what can we do to appeal to more people and more area. We don't want to keep it all Texas all the time.
Well, I have to say though, I quite often refer to, and this is backwards because Texas isn't a capital, but I always say Texas is the capital of the needlepoint world. Like there is more needlepoint going on in Texas than maybe in the rest of the country put together. Wow. And I know we do a lot of shipping, and our number one state that we ship to is Texas.
Wow, that's interesting.
That's great.
Yeah. Needlepoint is big in Texas. I mean,
Houston has 5 stores. 5.
Yeah, crazy.
I know.
And I'm very good friends with Heidi at Chaparral.
We are too.
And I'm always amazed that one city can support, and they're not like just ho-hum needlepoint stores. Like they're all
the big ones.
Stores, It's amazing. It's amazing. So that's great. So you're well, let's back up a little bit. You both have always stitched? What does always mean?
Yes. Since we were little, like my mom taught us how to stitch when we were in like lower school, 4th, 5th grade, that kind of age. She stitched back then, and she had some Bargello pillows in the house and stuff like that. So we've been stitching forever. I mean, and I didn't realize how much I was using stitching as sort of like a therapy in a lot of ways, but I stitched in college and when my kids were little. To me, it's just so relaxing. I don't even almost care about the finishing part of it. I just like the act of stitching.
Right. And have you always stayed stitching, Rebecca, or did you have like a pause in the action? I think some of us that stitch since we were young have little pockets of time that we didn't stitch.
Sure. I've had some small periods where I haven't, but for the most part, I've always stitched. And, I agree with Elizabeth. I think it's very therapeutic. We tend to be a little bit different stitchers.
I know, it's funny.
I tend to really like to do all the different stitches and kind of really bead things. And, mine are a little bit smaller projects, more intricate. Elizabeth just loves that motion of just the basket weave. She just really finds that therapeutic. But we've all done stockings. We both have entered stockings in the Texas State Fair and won ribbons. Elizabeth was
I was
first.
first.
Which of course greatly inspired me to enter something. So I did. I actually am starting a new stocking because my niece is having a baby, and I made 2 stockings for them when they got married. So I've got a new one to start that I'm really hopeful. Elizabeth and I both got 3rd place ribbons. I won a 2nd place ribbon.
Uh-oh, sounds like the gauntlet's being thrown.
The gauntlet's being thrown
proud,
a little bit.
Elizabeth.
It's funny, Rebecca. So she likes to say she's not the creative one, but she's actually really good at stitching, selecting stitches and coming up with stitch guides. I mean, I know stitch guides are so time consuming. I don't think people realize how much time those take.
No, I don't.
But she's really good at that. And I'm sort of more of a purist, a traditional, I love basket weaving, and I love just sort of the uniformity of making your stitches all, I guess I'm very, type A and all that, but, and I love stitching belts and like making things like that. Whereas Rebecca loves to stitch a lot more ornaments and stand up. She has all these PD ornaments, and every single PD ornament she went on this quest to find all the missing PD ornaments. Whereas I kind of do like, God, I've done so many belts. I can't even see straight. I have done about 6 stockings. I did all my kids and my husband's. And then I've done more than 6. And then I did 3 of Birds of a Feather, came out with sort of a more contemporary stocking, I don't know, 10 years ago. And so I stitched those for the girls. And then I did, my best friend had twins, and so I did her 2 stockings. Those were the ones that went at the state fair.
Nice.
Yeah.
But I
But
feel
yeah,
like for anyone who's listened to Megan and I for very long, Megan and I are not biological sisters, but I feel like in a lot of ways, like you're Elizabeth is Megan and Rebecca is me. Because I'm the one who I love all the decorative stitches, and Megan does too, but she always says I'm not a stitch guide writer, but she has this like vision that I don't have just in life. Like she's much more entrepreneurial and risk taking than I am, but she likes a good old basket weave belt better than anybody.
yeah, Megan and I would hit it off.
For sure. So we talked a little bit about when WIPStitch being born, being a COVID baby, basically.
Basically, yes.
So yeah, you guys are fairly new on the scene, but you've got a really a line of depth for the 2 years. Has it been 2 years?
Yeah. 2 years.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
this summer.
So tell us a little bit about your line and the different segments of it.
Sure.
I know you start out with your Texas centric things.
We start out with the Texas icons, which is, the water burgers and the bluebells. And shockingly, we send those things all over the country, because I think if you're born and raised in Texas and you move elsewhere, those are the 2 things that people love. So really, we ship those all over. But we've also done a collection of stamps, of kind of holiday stamps, which was really cute. We have almost every holiday except Thanksgiving, which Elizabeth is going to do the Thanksgiving.
Everybody wants that Thanksgiving gnome. And I mean, I'm just not inspired by him anymore, I guess. I've got to do it though. I'm going to do it.
You're going to finish it.
And I'm going to do a Mardi Gras. They're on my list to do in June.
Yeah.
Well, put us down for a Mardi Gras one. I think that you all maybe know that I have a tie to New Orleans. I went to school in New Orleans, and my youngest daughter goes to school in New Orleans. So, and I now have her stitching. So
good.
You guys kind of came into my life design wise when I was in Vero Beach, because I was at Seaside Needlepoint, I think.
Yes.
Seaside Stitches, whatever the Vero Beach store is called. I'm sorry, Carol and Linda, that I can't remember.
It's Seaside.
Store.
Yes, Seaside.
He said something.
Yeah.
And they had your stamps on the wall. I'm like, yes. I have to have those at my store. So we usually have all of your stamps in stock because I think they're darlings. So
thank you. Well, and I think the stamps, have some real longevity to them. I think we could start rolling out states or cities or, all kinds of.
I kind of want to do a whole set of stamps that are maybe horoscope signs, or, like there's all kinds of things you could do with those. I just like the idea of the little vintage stamp size. It's a perfect size for a good little project.
Yes. So Texas centric and then stamps. And then what happened?
Then Elizabeth came up with the Jeeps, the Jeep
Oh,
collection.
My
Which-
youngest drove a Jeep, and like she used to say, and it's funny, I've never had anyone else in the family have a Jeep. Rebecca's son has a Jeep, but like, and I noticed with him and her, they're both our youngest. They're so like, it's a part of their identity. Like she's just like, this Jeep is, and we sold it because she went to Paris for her first year of college. And I was like, I'm not going to have that Jeep collecting dust all year. And like it was the most devastating thing I've ever done to my child. She was like, that is like a part of my identity, Mom. Like it just, she would just go sit in that Jeep. And I thought Jeep people are like a certain stripe. And so I kind of got me started about coming up with different ways to sort of dress up, brand a Jeep. And it just kind of went from there.
Super fun. Super
Yeah.
fun. And I think then you have a 12 days of Texmas and a 12 days that I'm very familiar with. So which of those came first?
Well, actually, the first one was the 12 days of Christmas that we're doing the wonderful club with you. We're super excited about that. And Elizabeth, after that, we have the 12 days of Southern Christmas that we did first.
Okay.
Which we're actually doing a similar club with Labors of Love in Atlanta, Georgia, which is going to be, I think, rolled out later this summer. But we changed, like the partridge in a pear tree is a magnolia and a cardinal and a magnolia tree.
Okay.
Like 3 jugs of sweet tea. Like 11 footballs flying. I mean, it's all sort of Southern. So anybody that's from the South or a stitcher, that lives in the South, they'd be fun for that. But they're very different than the number is not as big a part of the design. With the first set, I love typography and I love numbers and their shapes, and spent so much time taking typography classes in design school. And I really I looked around at all these other 12 days, and there were so many that had the numbers, but the numbers weren't that big a part of and I kept thinking like, wow, if you can look at like old hand tooled numbers and things, there's so many details to them graphically. And I'm a pretty graphic designer, I guess, is I kind of tend to lean a little more towards the contemporary. And so I designed that set specifically with wanting to make the numbers be, a big part of the feature. That's why they're a little larger. So, because I wanted to be able to get those detailed numbers in.
Yes. I think everything is going to show backwards, but I'll just flip through these while you're talking.
And so I kind of like with that set, I created a color palette that is a little different than Christmas as well, because I kind of feel like there's a lot out there that's real traditional, and I always am like, let's do something non-traditional. So I did a color palette that I thought blended in with Christmas colors really well, but was different. And we picked, I think, 6 different backgrounds. So there's always 2 numbers that share the same background. Which interestingly makes a really tough thing when you're trying to paint them, because you got to get the colors right every time. We went through a few painting pain points with that set, but now we're finally there. But I love the way the numbers have these sort of tooling details, the lines and the little they're almost like Moroccan kind of, or Oriental rug kind of shapes in them. And I think they're really visually interesting, and not all of them have, the exact number of whatever like whatever Lords of Leaping.
Hard to fit
I just don't think you need to repeat, some of them they're really repeat. Our other set has, whatever number that is, has that number on it. But with this one, I was kind of like, you don't have to do that on every 12 days of Christmas set. Let's break the mold. Right. So, and when we did those, Rebecca had met Patricia at a few events, and then also had reached out to her a couple of times about different, things in the business. Patricia was incredibly helpful to us when we first started.
Absolutely.
And we could not have really started this business without her. She gave us incredible advice. So yay, Patricia, thank you. But when Rebecca shared those with Patricia, she was like, oh my God, I want to do these. These are awesome. And I mean, they're perfectly suited for her talents. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Patricia Stone is like, she has a magic wand. Like your designs were beautiful, because I saw the canvases obviously before she stitched them, but Patricia, in her way, took it to a whole new level. Like,
Yes,
I
she
always
she does.
find so interesting how the negative space she chooses, like what's not stitched, where she skips and uses the background of the canvas to come through. Some of those stripings in the background is like that number 5. We use that. We hit 5,000 followers last week, and I was talking to Mercer, who helps my middle daughter helps us with our social media, and we were trying to come up with ideas for how to celebrate hitting that. And Mercer was like, duh, mom, like you have that incredible number 5 canvas that somebody stitched. I was like, oh yeah, you're right.
Well, and
Well,
we had the pleasure of having Trisha at our retreat last weekend. Is it last weekend? 2 weekends ago? 2 weekends ago. And she made the point that she did a different background stitch in all 12 of them. So it was a really good learning opportunity for that.
It's definitely, being designed for a more advanced stitcher that really enjoys the creative process. And I do love the fact they're a little larger, but I think they'd be beautiful on a banister, garland down a banister, or garland over a mirror, or over a fireplace, just, on their own. But they're fun.
Good. And so are your other 12-day series, are they the same size? Because one's Texas oriented and one's Southern oriented. Is that right?
Yes.
Two others?
Yes. So the Southern oriented one, which I have the set here.
Oh, good. Let us see.
See, so it's kind of, it's a 4-inch round. So this is the cardinal in a magnolia tree. This is 2 wild turkeys, the 3 jugs of sweet tea.
Love it.
4 pickup trucks, because we like our pickup trucks in the South. 5 golden hush puppies.
Cute.
This is 6 cotton bowls growing.
Pretty.
7 briskets smoking, because we love our barbecue in the South.
It doesn't roll off your tongue quite as easily as the song you've sung since you were 5, right?
8 pecan pies piping.
Oh my gosh.
9 fireflies glowing, because we're kind of famous for our fireflies in the South. This one's a little harder to see, but this is Texas 10 tornadoes twirling, because we have our tornadoes. 11 footballs flying, and 12 crawfish crawling. So they're 8-inch rounds, and kind of we went with 4-inch rounds, excuse me.
That's okay.
And we went with 1 solid background on them. But this one's, the numbers are smaller and the items are more a centerpiece. But we're doing that with Labors of Love, and Elizabeth has the Texas Christmas on her design list agenda.
Oh, I thought that one was out. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm not as in tune with the Texas centric things being up here in Michigan. So my apologies for that.
And we're going to do that one with Heidi at Chaparral.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
That's really fun. So, and I'm asking questions kind of in the wrong order. Where do you get most of your inspiration for your designs?
Well, I mean, Rebecca and I talk a lot about different things. Once we sort of got started in the company and had some initial success, and, we really started to focus on trying to grow our catalog into broader, so we could appeal to all the stores across the country, and all kinds of people, and also different age group. I find that different age groups like different kinds of projects, which is interesting. And so, I mean, it's interesting, the patterns and the trends, and like some of the stuff that I think is just going to sell like crazy. And then some things that I'm like, that's never going to sell off the charts. Like there's a surprise a day. Always a surprise. But most of my inspiration comes from, I've always said this, I design things in my head before I ever sit down and design them. It's a visual thing in your brain. I don't know what it is. And a lot of them just kind of come to me when I'm stitching, or when I have time to just sort of sit and think. I want to try different things. Like I just did a set of keychain designs. We haven't done anything like that. I want to do glass cases. I want to do clutches. I love geometrics and kind of more abstract stuff that we don't have as much of, but I love stitching those types of projects. I want to try, doing some of those type of projects. Then between the two of us, we'll see things like funny sayings, or following kind of pop culture trends, and we'll get inspiration from that. I mean, I kind of get inspiration from everything. That's a hard question, I guess.
I know it's all around you. I'm sure when you have that artistic eye, you see your inspiration everywhere.
Well, and a lot of times I just want to, I try a lot of stuff. Sometimes it just doesn't work, and I'm like, oh, well, beach. And then like the other day I discovered a geometric pattern in my computer that I did like a year ago. And I was like, you know what, that's kind of cool. Like, what can I make that into? So I come back to stuff a lot.
Right. Well, we just had my son's graduation from the University of Texas, and we had a whole new saying come out of that because, as boys are, they can have lots of highs and lows in their process to get into graduation. And, we were so proud of him and that the fact he made it to the end, but we were kind of like, it takes a village and a vineyard with these boys. So we, Elizabeth kind of popped out a quick design of it takes a village and a vineyard.
I love it.
Yeah.
Very good.
So it comes from life, comes from everything.
Yes. Do you have any personal favorites in your line? Things that you want to stitch that you haven't stitched yet? What?
Oh, yes. Well, I have I'm excited about some of the things we have coming up to stitch, but in the personal line, I am definitely wanting to do the Texas 12 Days of Texas Christmas myself. I'm waiting, itching for that, but I've done a lot of the stamps and I've done all the Texas icons, of course. So we do a lot of local little markets, sometimes Christmas markets, and it's amazing. I have my collection on display and people just come up, they want to buy it right off the little tree. And I'm like, no,
that's my baby.
One thing, and this lady took the Whataburger literally off the tree and she handed it to Rebecca. She's like, I'll take this, please. Rebecca's like, no.
Yes,
I love our college belt collection. And I've stitched several of those as graduation gifts for good, close family friends. And I love our Prada Marfa, which is one of our best seller. Our two of our strongest sellers were the little Prada Marfa canvas of the art installation out in Valentine, Texas, and our Casamigos tequila. Like they're the gift that keeps on giving. And I love the Prada Marfa one, and I made it into a little, I have it right here. A little tiny little kind of that you could use for like rings or just, I love this little tray. I never thought I'd want a little tray, but I actually like the little tray more than the big trays. But I love that canvas. And I have been slowly working. I don't have as much time to stitch because I'm designing, but it's cut into my stitching time. But I want to definitely stitch the 12 days of Christmas set that you all are using at your for your club. And I've done a couple of those numbers. And then I'm really excited. We've got because I'm a pattern and texture kind of girl, we've got a set of Christmas crackers coming out they're ornaments that are shaped kind of like the English Christmas cracker. And they're just really patterns. Like there's sort of a gingham check one. There's one that's based off of kind of French ribbons. There's like, I think there's 5 of them, Rebecca, aren't there? Yeah, 5. But we did them in 2 colorways. So one is kind of traditional green, red, and gold. And then the other one is sort of a bright emerald green and hot pink. And there they are. They just came in this week. So I'm super excited about them. And those are the ones that Jenny is helping us do stitch guides for. And we're launching those in July. And I'm actually really excited about those because I think they're fun, and they could be, I think you could do them as ornaments, but I also think if you wanted to, you could do them as sort of like a stand up or kind of and do them lay them horizontally, and like you could put them at place settings on the table.
That's what I was just going to say, place settings, and they'd kind of
they could be really fun, or tabletops, or just sprinkled along a mantle even. I don't know. I think there's a lot of things you could do with them, even though they're kind of a long shape. You could hang them, vertically or horizontally. And we're considering, or actually we're doing, I just haven't done them yet, but it's on my list. Doing a tree, kind of a fat, like tree shape, but using similar patterns like that you could do for your table. And Rebecca is definitely, she wants to stitch those.
I want to stitch those. And I'd love to figure out a way to do the crackers in a cylinder.
Yes, that's my other thing too, is I want to make them round. But
Kind of
then
like-
it's getting those things on the end, but I think we could use like maybe a pom-pom or maybe something that's not necessarily stitched on those ends.
Right, yeah, our finishers have done those before with either like wrapped in tulle or wrapped
Oh.
in, it looks like cellophane, but it's a little higher quality than
Yeah.
that. I don't know the proper term for it. So they're super cute. They're a little harder for the stitcher to envision. Like a lot of times we have to explain to them what this oddball shaped thing becomes. So a finished picture taped to the canvas is super helpful.
Right.
But yeah, they're really fun, really
Yeah,
fun.
you got to have a stitch sample on those.
Yes, for sure. Well, good. Well, anything else we didn't cover that you guys want to talk about?
No, I think we kind of covered the crackers upcoming and the
Good.
12 days of Southern Christmas.
Yeah. We also have these really, and this is going to be interesting too. I'm going to be fascinated to see how these do. I think they're going to be great. We have place cards coming out
Oh,
that
yes.
we have 4 designs, and Rebecca and I both stitched them this spring, and they're being finished right now so we can shoot
Look at
them.
those.
But
Pretty.
we've got a Bargello set. That's the Bargello set, a Bargello set, and then kind of one that's sort of a Nordic ribbon pattern, and then kind of a traditional sort of snowflake pattern. And then this toy soldier that Rebecca did those. She likes those a lot. And those are going to come out in September. Is that right, Rebecca?
Those
Yeah,
designs
we're
will
gonna.
be little easel back so you can swap out the name.
Well, you can do them anyway. We've designed them where you can actually stitch the name in it if you want, and it'll come with a letter chart.
Well,
Or
alphabet.
you can do little silk ribbons at the corners, kind of right here, across the corner,
Oh,
and
yeah.
put a place card in it. We're actually did these in a collaboration with a girl in Texas here who is real well known for her tablescapes. So we kind of collaborated with her, and we're launching them together. So I think these should be kind of fun. I personally, you can do them as an easel back, or you can also just finish them flat and have them sitting on your table on top of the napkin.
Yeah.
Right.
They're
Maybe
pretty
next to the
versatile.
Christmas cracker.
Yeah.
Well, fabulous. Well, this has been super fun. I loved getting to know both of you better, and just keep on going. You guys are doing a great job. It's
Thank
really
you.
fun to see some new,
We
fresh
really
design.
appreciate working with you and getting to know your store better. That's the best thing about this whole business has been getting to know so many people in the community. It's such a great group of people that it's fun to see everybody that just really enjoys and loves creating things. So it's been the best part.
Yes.
It-
Well,
it-
we
The
saw
community's been very welcoming, and I always like to say, Needlepoint life happens around the Needlepoint table, and the reason I love it is because I think it's all about heirlooms and memories and family traditions. I mean, it's just a really wonderful, happy business. So we've really enjoyed being a part of it, and it felt very embraced and welcomed by the community. So we feel very lucky.
Well, it is a special industry community for sure. And I'm very happy and proud to be part of it myself. So this was great. Thank you all both. I appreciate your time this morning. For those of you who have found us for the first time, do us a favor and hit subscribe. That helps other stitchers find the Pointing It Out podcast so they can get to know all these fabulous people just like you have. So thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend, and we'll chat soon. Bye.
Thanks, Melissa.
Mhm.